Welcome to Renewable New Mexico, a program about the people and companies that make our state an epicenter for renewable energy innovation. My name is Shawn Wells, and I'm your host. The title of today's show is Growing a Renewable Business, Part 2, Strategy. I'd like to welcome our first guest, Otis Armijo Castor, a self-described solar entrepreneur running many successful local businesses that focus on renewable energy. Thank you for joining us today, Otis.
Well, thank you, Shawn. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. Well, you're one of our native New Mexicans.
That's true. I've been in New Mexico for about 7 generations now.
7 generations. Wow. The family name Armijo?
No, actually, the family name Castor was from that area. Castor and Wells, ironically.
Which connects us, yeah.
My grandfather was Wells, and he grew up in Clonch, New Mexico, and he was a bean farmer there.
Was there a history of connection to renewable energy through the family?
You know, there wasn't so much the connection with renewable energy in general, but we had a lot of other technologies that we were utilizing on the ranch, farming, obviously. My dad has a ranching type background. We did a lot of water harvesting. We had the old cisterns. Matter of fact, I remember my grandpa pulling up water from a cistern inside of his house. So the majority of the houses in the early 1900s, 1920s, 30s to 40s, all had cisterns in them. So a lot of those houses were, you know, relatives of mine in that area.
So that's pretty early influence with sustainable design, sustainability.
Absolutely.
What was your early interest in renewable energy? What really sparked your passion?
I think the first time that I really started looking at energy from a energy perspective was one day, and it must have been junior in high school. You know, a lot of people, they really don't find their occupation until later in life. They go through college, they go through different types of jobs, and they finally find out what they love to do. For me, it was very different in that I found out what I wanted to do very early and what I loved to do. And it all started with this little device that you have here, which I affectionately call a photomill, but a lot of other people call it a radiometer. And so what this thing does is when it's sitting in the light, it turns, and you can see it kind of turning now.
It's going crazy under the studio lights.
So the difference in the temperature hitting the vanes causes the unit to spin. So I was looking at that one day in science class, and I was seeing, wow, if we can only utilize that type of resource to power people's homes. Now, that being said, my family, the Wellses and the Castors, they are all energy backgrounds. So they were natural gas, oil field type people. So my family's roots are based in energy. And energy for me is no different from oil and natural gas, coal, nuclear, solar, wind, geothermal, and other sources. So for me, it wasn't so much of an environmental thing, it's a necessity, it's a family thing. We were in energy, and this is just another form of energy. So I told my dad at the time, it's like, I'm gonna go into renewable energy. And he said, you know what, that's a great choice. This is coming from an oil guy. This is a great choice because, you know, we're finding that it's harder and harder to get oil. We're finding it harder and harder to get natural gas. This is a wonderful choice for you as an occupation and staying with our family roots as energy producers.
Yeah, so it's part of the family business.
Absolutely.
In a way. That's great that you found such family support to be able to project into the future coming from that background.
Absolutely.
Did you find a lot of, once you'd made that decision, what road did you take that helped you support that decision?
Well, I had to have a little bit of a change of pace, and the year before, I think I was a sophomore in high school, I had a nomination to the Naval Academy. So I was going to pursue a military career until I'd seen the photomill. So I did have a brief stint at New Mexico Military Institute, and I found that I just couldn't, you know, take the military regime like I thought I would be able to. And so I immediately came into Albuquerque, went to a program, Energy Engineering, with Tom Feldman, and we worked on different types of solar principles.
And that was that just stirring everything exciting in you?
Yeah, it was, and the unfortunate thing was that was kind of pre solar. In those days, there was not a lot of solar going on, so it didn't pique my interest quick enough. So I quit college and I started my own renewable energy company.
And that's a pretty unique story, just having the courage to jump right into a business. What were the first steps that you took? You got a partial degree, a little bit of experience.
Well, in college, when I was taking some college courses in renewable technologies, energy engineering, I'd actually worked for a couple of different companies, one of which was a passive solar home builder. So we're building passive solar homes at the time. So that piqued a little bit of my interest in that passive solar is definitely part of the renewable energy game that we play now. But and also, dealing with the companies, there was an early company called Advanced Solar Systems, a couple of hot air companies at the time called Southwest Solar and Solar Age, real early solar energy type companies. And I'd seen what they were doing, and I could sense that I could replicate that. So I started working with them, the different companies that I just mentioned, and dropped out of college. I actually was taking a few classes at TVI, which is now CNM at the time, and went into doing my own work and my own business.
And what is that business? You mentioned you have actually multiple businesses in the renewable energy field. What are they? What do you cover?
Well, I started off with the Advanced Solar Systems, and I became part owner of that company. So what we did with that, it kind of migrated into another company called Energy West Corporation. And with that company, we're doing a lot of solar thermal installs pre-1985. 1985, we still had tax credits here in New Mexico. So there was a huge boom to install solar thermal type systems. There was no such thing as solar photovoltaic at that time. So we did probably a few thousand solar hot air systems, solar hot water heating systems for people's houses. And I still see a lot of those systems still working. If they maintain them, just like any other system, HVAC, hot water, the swamp coolers that you might have on your roof, or the air conditioners that you have to maintain them. A lot of people that didn't maintain their solar equipment, eventually it went bad. But there's a lot of it out there that's still working, especially the old solar hot air systems.
They're fairly low maintenance, these systems?
Well, you have to maintain them. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're fairly easy to maintain. It's usually lubricating some pumps and motors and whatnot. Keeping it simple proved to be the biggest challenge back in those days. People like myself wanted to overcomplicate things, and we put up these huge solar heating systems, solar hot water heating systems, and they tend to have deficiencies in the hot summer months. So it's utilizing all that extra energy in the summer when you don't need it. In the wintertime, you can use all the solar hot air or solar hot water you could possibly generate. In the summertime, not so much. You might have a swimming pool that may be able to utilize that energy in the summertime. But if you don't have a swimming pool, then that energy goes to waste and eventually causes problems with the system.
So I know you also dabble with inventions. You actually hold some patents yourself. You've got these businesses. What's your favorite thing to work on? What kind of projects do you like to take on?
I am a little bit different than most of the renewable energy environmental types that you'll meet, in that I've always looked at the renewable energy industry as a business. And it's even though I believe and I have strong beliefs in the environment and taking care of the environment, it first is business. So in order for it to become mainstream, you need to treat it like a business. If you don't treat anything like a business, it's going to eventually go away. So I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned, is that treat it like a business. Get products that the people want, that the consumers can use, that you could stand behind. And so that's what we did. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of systems that were made for the military. It's like first step, what about people that normally wouldn't utilize renewables? The military is one of them. It's like taking the renewable energy systems out to them. What is your needs? Well, we have these remote operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, all these different areas that we have military operations in. They need power out there. Matter of fact, if they don't have renewable forms of energy for powering up their equipment, they have to haul in diesel and in some cases propane and other things to power up their facilities. If they have renewable energy systems out there, they don't have to haul in those deliveries of those fuels, which means that there's nobody planting roadside bombs blowing them up. So they were able to capture the usefulness of renewable energy technology very quickly. Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing a trend with several of our successful business owners in the renewable energy field that you find the niche, you find the need, and you fill it. And you fill it with quality, and that's the formula.
So that's that's one of the things. There's two sides to every coin. You know, the military, we've gotten them accustomed to utilizing technology, our technology. Matter of fact, we're doing a lot of military installations now with naval bases, Air Force bases, and Army bases, putting in renewable energy fueling stations. These stations is a patented product that one of my first patents, which is a tracking solar carport. So to go back to that patent, we wanted to bring the photovoltaic, now the solar electricity, down to the ground in the early days, about 10 years ago. There was a few companies that were putting it up on the roof, and I was like, I'm not hiding my product. I want to bring it down to the ground. I want people to see it. And here in New Mexico, as you well know, it's very, very hot. So it's like providing shaded parking is huge. You know, whenever you could park in the shade, it's 40 to 50
I could
degree
use three of those. I could use three of those, and I know a lot of people that would love that kind of facility. You've got the opportunity to see how the solar energy field is changing here in New Mexico. Give us a quick thought on where you see it going.
In New Mexico, I think that because of the climate that we live in, you have the abundance of solar energy, you have the abundance of wind energy, and I'm sure you've heard this before. It's one of those few states where we have all the blessed energy that we could possibly consume, and so we can import it. So it's going to be, that the future is the plants like Tres Amigas, where we could tie into other infrastructure that's going down to Texas, or going to the East Coast, or going to the West Coast. So the abundance of energy resource that we have in this state, the good renewable energy resource, geothermal, solar, wind, can be distributed to those other parts of the country.
Great
I mean, they don't have that. And say in the Northeast, they don't have that type of resource. We have it here. We're lucky to have it here. And I think that, if I'm a big proponent of solar and green jobs, we need to promote, education, to train the students and train people and train businesses to utilize this technology so we can export it to other places in other states.
That's a great thought to conclude on. We thank you so much for your energy and for the innovation that you are bringing to New Mexico.
Absolutely, we appreciate you having us here.
My pleasure. Let's take a quick break to hear from our next sponsor, and we'll be right back with our next guest. Welcome back to Renewable New Mexico. Today's topic is growing a renewable business. It's the second part, and the topic under that is strategy. Our guest today is David Hughes, founder and CEO of Affordable Solar in Albuquerque. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I am really excited about this show. I am an entrepreneur at heart, so I am looking forward to hearing your story, your personal story, and how you did this. We'd love to share with people how people go about in establishing a business in renewable energy. But I'll start off with a simple question. What brought you to New Mexico?
What brought me to New Mexico is my daughter. So I had gone back to school to study renewable energy. Gosh, in it was in the early 1990s, and my daughter was born, and her mother and I split up. She moved down to New Mexico. I didn't want to be that far from either of them, so I moved down here, and that was in 1994. And
you said you went back to school in renewable in renewable energy.
Yeah.
What spurred that on?
I had always been interested in energy, and I went to hear a guy called Amory Lovins talk. I was living in Iowa at the time. He went to talk to a Senate subcommittee meeting, and he was talking about energy efficiency, and he was talking about, he held up this energy efficient light bulb and the shower head, and he said, do you guys know what this is? And there was about 100 of us, and about 70 of us put up our hands. And then he said, and how many of you know where to get this? And 3 of us put up their hands. And I thought, there's an opportunity here. So I got interested in renewable energy. I was going to get involved with, my degree is in history and philosophy, and I decided I wanted to go back. I didn't want to spend 4 years getting an engineering degree, and found this college that would take my liberal arts education and allow me to get a degree in environmental technology.
And did you have an interest specifically in renewable energy, or did you were attracted to that talk?
Yes.
Okay, so you went to the talk with the intention of learning more about renewable energy.
Well, I went to the talk specifically because it was Amory Lovins was talking about energy efficiency, and he was a hero of mine I wanted to hear.
Okay.
But in renewable energy, I think back then it was the back to the landers. It was about independence. It harked back to older American values of independence, of I think that we were kind of an artisan culture with Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and we built things, and that appealed to me at the time. And I liked the idea of people being able to be in a remote area and be able to produce their own power.
Mm-hmm. And did you already have an entrepreneurial leaning before that light bulb, so to speak, went off in your head?
I had a nascent entrepreneurial leaning. It really came out being a parent when I had to provide from the family.
Yeah,
so,
I know that feeling. Once you have kids, it triggers some sort of primal thing about making sure you're going to be able to take care of your family.
Well, I think it was a lot for me. It was lateral shifts until my daughter was born, and then it was okay. We need to go straight ahead here.
That's exciting. I mean, what a wonderful motivator. So you've taken this. You went to this speech.
Yeah.
You were inspired. What was the next step?
So I came down here and looked around. I went to ZoneWorks. I went to several other places. I went up to NREL up in Denver. I went out to a company called Photocom, which was based out in Arizona.
And these are all companies that are selling photovoltaic systems?
NREL is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
Okay.
Photocom was a company selling photovoltaic equipment. Currently now owned by Kyocera Solar, and then ZoneWorks, which is kind of one of the granddaddies of solar in New Mexico and in the United States.
So you've got this background information now. You were hungry for knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you collect this information. You knew there was a need for this service.
Yes.
So why don't we back up and why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do, and then we'll go back and find out how you got there.
So the company has, there's two parts to the company. One is distribution, which we do nationally. That's the larger part of the company. And then we have an EPC, engineering, procurement, and contracting, basically installation part of the company, which does residential installations locally here in New Mexico, roughly about 1 megawatt to megawatt and a half a year. And we do commercial projects locally, and then we're doing commercial projects nationally.
Wow. So, and you started from a seed, I'm told.
Yes, started
Okay.
from in the South Valley in the Five Points area. I had found this, it was a 1964 Airstream, 28-foot sovereign of the road, and it was just glorious. And so it was in one of the neighbors' yards, and so I bought it from them for about $2,500. Moved it over to our place and started. That was my initial office. Was in the Airstream trailer in it was actually our front yard, but not in our backyard.
And did you instantly install solar power to that, or did that come later?
No, I couldn't afford it. I had a plug running from the house and the phone line coming from the house out to the Airstream.
So we're in the office. I don't know your story, how you got from the Airstream to this nationally distributing company.
Well, actually, what started there, before that, I had worked for ZoneWorks for 3 years, from '94 to about '97, and then went to work with Wendy Dankoff when it was Dankoff Solar with Wendy and Paul Benson. Did that for about a year, but I was having to drive up to Santa Fe. I didn't like driving up there all the time, so I talked with Paul Benson, who was by that time the president of the company, and said, I'm not interested in coming back and forth, but I'd like to stay working together. So we bought product. I put an ad in the two things that I was good at was, one was selling the technology and understanding how it worked. I wasn't really good at anything else, but I put an ad in the back of Home Power magazine it was a $25 ad, and lo and behold, people started calling me. And that's how it started. And then I started the business in the Airstream trailer.
And there's always those growing pains, the logistical issues, and what would you say you learned from going from that step, reselling parts out of your Airstream trailer to a national company?
Thank goodness for luck. So I would, I think luck is more important than anything. It was the industry. I never expected it to get this big. The industry was growing, and it was fortunate to grow with the industry. Now, we did some smart things because I'm always interested in learning, and I think that my talent is spotting talent in other people, and I've learned to hire people that are smarter than myself. So that's what's allowed us to continue to grow through many missteps. In 2006, we grew too rapidly. We ended up laying off 30% of the workforce about 6 days before Christmas. But we were lucky that the industry was still on the ascendance. And so we were able to recover from our mistake, understand the mistakes that we made, and then put the protocols, policies, procedures in place so we didn't make the same mistakes again.
And you're still here in New Mexico?
Yes.
And you have no intention of relocating. What do you think makes New Mexico such a powerhouse for solar research?
There's a variety of things. I think the national labs that we have at Sandia is one. The other is, I'll hark back to ZoneWorks. And ZoneWorks was a crucible. Many companies were started by people who had worked at ZoneWorks at one time and another. Direct Power and Water, or now DPW, was one. Unirac, I was there at the same time as the guys from Unirac. John Liebendorfer and Hal Newman were there. Had worked with Steve Baer, and then left and started their own companies. And so I think that's part of the reason. The other reason is that we had a lot of, I mean, back in the day, there wasn't, grid-tied power didn't exist. And because we had a lot of people moving in from out of state, or we had people, not a lot, we had people moving in from out of state who needed power in remote areas, it created enough of a crucible or maybe critical mass of people who were interested in doing something. And then, so that as those to change the metaphor, as the seeds were all there and ready to be sprouted, overlaid with an environment in which grid tie power was fostered, we all started to grow at the same times. And now we look at companies like Array Technologies here, and I was just sitting beside Ron Corio the other day, who's the founder, and he was saying they'll do 1 gigawatts worth of trackers this year. So in the United States, we do 3 gigawatts. So 30% of the United States is coming out of one company here in New Mexico, or 5% of the world market. It's stunning and astounding and marvelous to be here.
Yeah. Well, I want to just take the last couple seconds. If there is someone out there looking to start a business in renewable energies and they're inspired by your story, what's the one piece of advice you could leave them with?
I think it's perseverance. Perseverance will not necessarily lead to success, but I think you're much more likely to gain success if you find something that you enjoy and then stick to it. And then success may or may not come, but enjoy what you're doing. If it's not working, find out why it's not working and make a change. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I wish your company great success, and I hope that you check in with us and let us know what's ahead for us here in New Mexico with solar technologies. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
That's our program, and thank you for watching. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of Renewable New Mexico. Until next time, this is Sean Wells reminding you, we are all solar powered.